check this thing out. I just built a Raspberry Pi powered NAS using the Argon EON case, and in this video, I'm going to tell you all about it. Hello again everyone, and welcome back. In today's video, what I'm going to do is show off a new Raspberry Pi powered NAS build. In fact, I have the finished build right here. It's powered by the Argon EON case from Argon 40, which is going to be the main subject of today's video. What I'll do is show you how to put it together, install OpenMediaVault. OpenMediaVault is awesome when it comes to network attached storage. I'll show you that as well. I'll show you everything you need in order to set up your own Raspberry Pi powered NAS in today's video. And by the end of the video, I'll give you my thoughts about this case and let you know if I think it's something that you should consider for your build. Now, before we get into the actual topic at hand today, I need to give you guys my usual disclaimer. It's the same disclaimer that I give you guys in every video that I do because the policy never changes. When I review a product or give you my thoughts on anything, it's presented without bias, and this video is no exception. Now, one more thing that I'll mention is that this time around, this product right here was purchased out of my own money. That means that Argon 40, the vendor that made this case, did not send this in to the studio for review. I was so excited that I just wanted to review this that I went and purchased it. I did ask Argon 40 for a review unit, but unfortunately they wouldn't return my emails for some reason. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I wanted to check it out, so I bought it, and here it is. So we're going to check it out in this video. Now, the way that this video will be structured today is in the next section, I'm going to show off the final build. I figured that way you won't get too far into the video just to realize that this isn't something that'll work for you. I want to give you that information first to make sure that it's a good fit. I don't want to waste your time. And then after that, I'm going to show off the build process for this case. After we put it together, I'm going to show you the process of setting up the software, specifically OpenMediaVault, which is an awesome solution for network attached storage. And then after that, I'll show you how to add shared storage to your NAS. And as always, there's going to be time codes in the description down below, so you could jump right to the section that most interests you. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's check out the Argon EON case from Argon 40. And here it is in all its glory. What you're seeing right here is the finished build. What I'll do in this section is go over the various features of this case, and that'll help you decide whether or not this case will fit your use case. Now first, the full name of this product is the Argon EON Pi NAS. And that's a bit of a mouthful, so what I'll do is just refer to this as the EON case going forward just to keep it simple. As you probably already know, judging by the title of this video, this product enables you to transform a Raspberry Pi into a full-featured network-attached storage solution. Now, what really got me excited for this case right here is the fact that it supports up to 4 physical hard drives. And that to me is a game changer because the ability to attach a real hard drive to a Raspberry Pi is not new. There's been various products released over the years that enable you to do just that. But the ability to have up to 4 hard drives in this case is a game changer, and it sets it apart from the majority of the other cases out there. But the ability to have multiple hard drives isn't the only thing that I like about this case. I mean, look at it. It looks great. It has a very modern aesthetic to it that I really appreciate, and it's also quite large. It looks like a real NAS solution, and it is a real NAS solution. It's definitely the largest Raspberry Pi case that I've ever reviewed on the channel, but it has to be larger in order to fit all of those hard drives, so that makes sense. On the back of the case, we have every single port in one place, and this makes it extremely easy to hide cables and manage cables. But the fact that we have audio and HDMI ports on the back, that means if you wanted to use this case for a desktop build instead of a NAS build, you can absolutely do that. Also, installing hard drives is a breeze. The side panels are attached by magnets, so you can remove those without a tool. On the inside, there's SATA ports for your hard drives, and you simply just attach those and then secure them in place by using the included screws. There's holes on the back of the case that will align to whatever type of hard drive you install, and then once you secure the hard drives in place, that's pretty much it. Another standout feature is that the power button doubles as an OLED status display. It'll show you things like CPU usage, RAM usage, and so on, and having that on the case itself is very, very cool. In addition, there's dedicated software for the EON case that powers the features of this case. It's very easy to install. So once you install one script, then all of the features of the case are enabled right then and there. Another neat feature regarding this case is that it has a battery slot built in, and by installing a battery, you can ensure that your real-time clock will stay synchronized. Time synchronization is very important in any NAS build, so that's a welcome feature. Now, unfortunately, there's no battery inside the box, so you will have to source that externally. I just want to make sure that you're aware of that, and I recommend that you do source a battery for this case because, well, again, having a synchronized clock with a NAS build is very important. So all of those features certainly sound good, but how difficult is this thing to put together? Well, actually, it's just not difficult at all. In fact, this is literally the easiest Raspberry Pi project-based case that I've ever put together on this channel. It's so inconsequential that I would rate the difficulty process as being like a 1 out of 10. It took me all of 5 minutes to install a Raspberry Pi. So if you want something that's easy and fast to put together, then this thing right here, that checks the box. I don't think anybody will have any problems with this at all whatsoever. Now, speaking of the build process, let's check that out right now. Anyway, inside the box is everything you'll need for the case itself. Obviously, the Raspberry Pi and SD card that you'll need is not included, so you will need to source those. That's probably to be expected, but I just wanted to be clear. But you'll get everything else that you need inside the box, even a screwdriver that's fairly decent, believe it or not. Now, even though you won't receive a Raspberry Pi inside the box, you will receive a Raspberry Pi mannequin. This plastic thing right here, I don't know what to call this thing, but what it is a piece of plastic shaped like a Raspberry Pi, and its purpose is to demonstrate the correct orientation of the Raspberry Pi if there was even any question. So it looks like Argon 40 really went all out to make sure that everything was obvious when it comes to assembly. Anyway, what I'll do right now is show you how the assembly process plays out. Now, I wasn't expecting everything to be on the side, so my ceiling-mounted camera was a little awkward, and I apologize for that. But thankfully, the process is very easy, like I mentioned, so it shouldn't take too long for me to explain the process. Anyway, here's how it plays out. To set up the Argon EON case, what you'll do first is remove the side panels. These are attached magnetically, so you won't need any tool or anything like that to remove the side panels. They should come off with no trouble at all. The next thing you'll do is remove the SATA board. It's attached to the case by a series of screws. It's very self-explanatory. So you'll remove those screws, and then once you do that, you'll just pull the SATA board right out of the case. That's very easy. And then underneath that, you'll see the Raspberry Pi mannequin that I mentioned earlier. And you'll also see the daughter board that's responsible for extending some of the ports to the back of the case. Take a good look at the mannequin because, again, that shows you the correct position of the Raspberry Pi. After you take a look at that, you'll remove it. And to do that, you'll remove the 4 hex nuts that secure it to the case. And there's also a Phillips screw that connects the daughter board to the case, so you'll remove that too. And then that will allow you to remove the mannequin and the daughter board. And what you'll do after that is attach the daughter board to the Raspberry Pi. Also inside the box, you'll find a few thermal pads. So what you can do is attach those thermal pads to the case. Just make sure that you remove the plastic covers from the thermal pads, and then you can simply attach those thermal pads to the inside of the case, as you see here. And then after that, you can attach the daughter board and Raspberry Pi combo to the case. You'll do that using the same 4 hex nuts that you just removed and also the Phillips screw that you just removed. So you'll secure everything back to the case, and then you'll also secure the SATA board. And once you do that, the build process is done. It's literally that simple. At this point, other than installing hard drives, which we will do later, the hardware build process is completely done. So what I'll do right now is segue into the software side of things. There's a few things that I recommend that you install. The first of which is the installation script for the case itself that will activate its various features. And then after we do that, I'll walk you through the process of setting up OpenMediaVault. So let's get into it. So to get started with the software side of things, what you'll want to do is grab an SD card. We're going to be wiping out the SD card, so make sure that there's nothing important on it before we continue. What we'll do is install a Raspberry Pi operating system to that SD card. What I'll do is go with Raspberry Pi OS. That's what I recommend you install as well if you are following along with me. But technically, there's other operating systems that you can install as well if you want to go another direction. For this process, I recommend using the Raspberry Pi Imager. Raspberry Pi Imager is a software utility that you can download for just about every operating system. So for all of you Mac or Windows users, you guys are covered as well. So you'll download the version of the tool for your operating system, and then you'll grab an SD card. You'll want to make sure that you back up anything on that SD card because this process will completely wipe it out. Anyway, you'll insert the SD card into a card reader on your computer, launch the Raspberry Pi Imager, and what that's going to do for us is set up that SD card to be an operating system disk for Raspberry Pi OS. On my end, I went with Raspberry Pi OS Lite, which is a special version of Raspberry Pi OS that has no GUI at all. That's not required though. If you do prefer a desktop environment, aka a GUI, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with having a GUI. It's just in my case, if I'm setting up a headless server, then I generally don't install a desktop environment. Anyway, what I'll do is summarize the process of using the Raspberry Pi Imager. I have a dedicated video that goes into it in more detail, but it's a very simple application to use and set up, so I don't think this is something that very many of you will have a problem with. To use this tool, what you'll do is choose an operating system. Like I mentioned, I decided to go with Raspberry Pi OS Lite, so you'll choose whatever one you want to go with. And then after you do that, what I recommend you do is click on the gear icon, and this is very important. This is how we set up the user account. So we'll click on that gear icon, and then we'll set up the user account for ourselves. So definitely make sure you configure your user account. Now, if you just so happen to be using the version of Raspberry Pi OS with a desktop environment, the standard version, in that case, you could skip enabling SSH if that's not something that you intend on using. With a desktop environment in Raspberry Pi OS, you can simply open up a terminal and there enter in any commands that we will be using later in the video. Now, optionally, you can also enable Wi-Fi from this menu as well. If you do plan on using Wi-Fi, then what you could do is add the information for your Wi-Fi access point right here inside this menu. Now, if you are planning on setting up a NAS, I always recommend wired Ethernet over Wi-Fi. So on my end, I didn't bother setting that up. But if you only have Wi-Fi available, then I suppose that's something that you can set up if you need it. Anyway, once all of that is done, we select our SD card. Make sure you select the correct SD card because again, it will be wiped out, and then you begin the process. After that, Raspberry Pi OS will be flashed to your SD card, and then once it's finished, you eject the SD card, insert it into your EON case, and power it on. The operating system side of things is ready to go. Oh, sorry. I was just consulting my own book, actually. You know, that's something that I do from time to time because unlike what many of you might think, I don't memorize everything that I teach you guys. Sometimes I actually look at my own book if I want to remember how to do something that I don't do every day. But since I'm on the subject of this book, check it out. Mastering Ubuntu Server, 4th edition, written by yours truly. It's available right now, and I think you're going to love it. So if you're looking for an Ubuntu book to teach you everything that you need to know when it comes to managing real Ubuntu servers, check it out. So definitely check out the book. I would really appreciate it. Anyway, let's get back to the video. After Raspberry Pi OS is set up and you boot up your new NAS build, the next thing we'll do is install the configuration script for the case. Again, what this will do is enable the various features of the case, so this is definitely something that you'll want to install. It's very easy to do, so it should only take you a couple of minutes anyway. To do this, what you'll do is connect to the system via SSH. If you don't know what the IP address is, you could check your router because it should get an IP address by default. Anyway, once you connect to this particular device via SSH or open up a terminal if you're using the desktop GUI version of Raspberry Pi OS, you'll enter in the command that you see on the screen right now. Once you do that, it's going to download the configuration script from Argon 40. Again, that'll enable all the features of the case. It should only take a few minutes and then you'll be good to go. Now the next thing we're going to do is set up OpenMediaVault. But before we do that, what I recommend you do on your side is set up a static lease for the IP address for your device. That way, you don't have to worry about it changing. If you've never heard that term before, it's the same thing as a DHCP reservation. And the reason why I recommend static leases is because that way, you'll never have to configure anything inside the operating system itself, and you'll still benefit from an IP address that doesn't change. Even better, if you use a different SD card, for example, or reinstall the operating system, you'll never have to worry about going in and setting up a static IP because all of that will be handled by your router or firewall, so that's what I recommend that you do. Now the thing is, I would love to show you the process of setting up a static lease, but the problem is I have no idea which model of router or firewall you may happen to have, and there's going to be thousands of different models out there, so there's no way I can create a tutorial that's going to show you how to set this up on your router or firewall. But basically, all you have to do is set up a DHCP reservation, static lease, whatever it's called in the interface. Make sure the IP address can't change, and then what we'll do is set up OpenMediaVault. And to set up OpenMediaVault, what you'll do is run the command that you see on the screen right now. As an aside, I will have all of the commands that you see in this video inside the blog post for this video. There's going to be a link to it in the description down below. That way, if you want to copy and paste, you can absolutely do that. Anyway, once you enter in the command that you see right here, the process of setting up OpenMediaVault will take a little while to complete. What I recommend you do is just step outside for a little bit if you have nice weather, maybe grab coffee or something. It could take 15 minutes or more, depending on the speed of your SD card for this to complete. Once it does complete, it will reboot. So make sure that you let it reboot itself. Don't cancel the process. It, again, takes a while, so just let it finish. And then once it reboots, we can finally log in to OpenMediaVault. And to do that, all you have to do is type in the IP address of your Raspberry Pi NAS server in an address bar of a browser, and that'll take you right to the login page for OpenMediaVault. So now we have everything set up except for the hard drives. We should probably install some hard drives inside the case because, well, it's not a NAS if we don't have any storage, right? So let's add some storage. So what I'll do right now is walk you through the process of installing hard drives into this particular case, and that'll complete our build. To do that, we'll log in with the default username and password that's provided along with OpenMediaVault itself, and the username is going to be admin, and then the password will be OpenMediaVault. And as you can see, I'm logged in. And now that I'm logged in, let's work through the process of configuring the storage. So as you could probably guess, we'll just go up here to storage. We'll click on that. And then next, we'll click right here where it shows disks. And then I'll scroll down. And as you can see, the two hard drives that I've installed on my end are listed right here. So it's a good sign that everything has been detected. So we should be good to go when it comes to configuring storage, so let's do it. So what I'll do is click on the first hard drive right here. It doesn't matter what order we do this in, but what I'm going to do is wipe out the hard drive. So if you don't want to do that, if there's already a file system, then you should not go along with what I'm about to show you. But I'm going to assume that you want to start fresh. So what I'll do is click on the first hard drive and then the eraser icon right here to wipe the hard drive. I'll confirm that and click yes. And then I'll choose quick. So it looks like it's done, so I'll click close. And we've wiped the first hard drive, so I'll just do the same thing for the second one. And that's done, so I'll click close. And then the next thing that we'll do is create a file system. So I'll click right here to do that. And then I'll click the plus sign here to create a file system. And I'll just create a simple file system with extended 4. So I'll click that right here. And then the device, I'll just choose the first one and I'll click save. Okay, so it looks like that one's done. All right, so next what we're going to do is choose where to mount the hard drive. So I'll drop this down right here. We need to first choose which hard drive we want to mount. I've only formatted the first one so far, so I'll click on that right here. And then I'll click Save. And as we can see, we have the volume listed right here. Now we do need to apply it before everything is saved though, so I'll click this button right here to apply the changes. And then I'll click Yes. We'll go ahead and let that continue. And we're all set. Now, when it comes to formatting the other hard drive, I'm not going to go ahead and do that here because it's just going to be the same process again. You'll repeat this process for any hard drive that you have installed. And then once you've done this for each of those drives, then you're all set with the storage and you can go ahead and start using it. Now, one thing I do want to point out though, I know some of you are probably wondering, why didn't you go ahead and install software RAID? Wouldn't that have been better? Well, yes, having RAID is always better than not having it, but the problem is, if you click right here to create RAID, and then you go to select a device, we're not going to see any devices listed right here. And the reason why is because the hard drives inside the case are going to utilize the USB bus, and because of that, they're not going to be shown in this menu. And it even tells you right here, devices connected via USB will not be listed because it's too unreliable. So that's why we're unable to set up software RAID in this case. But using other videos on this channel, there's other things that we could do when it comes to storage. So you could just go through other videos that I have on the channel and find out other ways to set up storage in Linux. But I just showed you how to create a file system on a hard drive, and we've done that. So we could check the box that storage is ready to go. And now that we have all of that out of the way, I think it's time for me to give you guys my final opinion about the Argon EON case. Alright, so we've arrived at the end of today's video, which means it's time for me to give you my overall thoughts on the Argon EON case. Is this something that you should consider buying? What are the pros and what are the cons? Well, let's talk about that. When it comes to things I love about this case, it's very easy to put together, and it gives you the ability to set up a proper NAS solution using a Raspberry Pi. And sure, it's not like we couldn't do that before, but most of the cases that are sold only have room for one hard drive. When you start to look for a case for the Raspberry Pi that supports more than one hard drive, well, the selection then becomes quite a bit lower. And with all that functionality, it still manages to look really good. It's a futuristic looking build. It looks great. And there's all kinds of great things about this case, even smaller features that I haven't mentioned yet, such as a built-in fan that works very well. It's quiet until you start to, do something crazy with the CPU. But even then, you can adjust the fan curve. So if you do find that the fan comes on too often, it's very easy to fix that. Also, I love the status display on the top of the case. It's really cool to be able to see some of the performance specs right there on that display. And you could do that without opening up a web browser or connecting to the command line. And that gives you an overall look at the health of your device, and it's just a nice touch. I really do like that. The assembly process is very, very, very easy, like I mentioned earlier, so I don't feel like anybody will have any trouble with the installation process at all. So if you are put off by cases that are, overwhelming to put together, the Pirate Man case that I reviewed in a previous video is a great example of that. It's very refreshing to have a Raspberry Pi case to put together that barely even constitutes a process at all. It's just, easy. So yeah, I absolutely love the Argon EON case. It's just so awesome. But even as awesome as it is, there's still a few things that I would like to make you guys aware of that might even constitute downsides. And the first of those is the price. It's priced at $155 US. And whether or not that's a con depends on your budget. If it's outside your budget, then it's a con. If it's not, well, if you purchase this case, you won't regret it. It's a solid build. It's mostly made of metal. It doesn't feel cheap at all. I do feel that you will get your money's worth if you do decide to purchase the Argon EON case from Argon 40. But where I think the constraint comes in regards to the price is going to be the inability nowadays to source a Raspberry Pi for a reasonable price. And this has nothing to do with Argon 40. It's just the way things are right now. So if you are unable to find a Raspberry Pi, that would mean you might have to pay more than retail price to obtain a Raspberry Pi. And then when you add that plus the cost of this case, that might be cost prohibitive to some people. But if you are able to find a Raspberry Pi for a reasonable price, I don't think you can go wrong with this case. I think the NAS build that you'll end up with is pretty awesome. Now, another downside is that the real-time clock is handy, but there's no battery included in the box at all. You will have to source that yourself. And considering the cost of this case, I wouldn't think it would be all that difficult for them to include a battery. I mean, how much do batteries cost? I don't think they cost all that much. So I don't think they would have took a financial hit by including a battery. I think for the cost of this device, I would expect a battery to be inside the box, but I just want you guys to be aware of the fact that you will have to source a battery. There is not a battery inside the box. Now, another thing I want to point out is that when you install hard drives inside the Argon EON case, those hard drives are going to use the USB bus. Given that, your RAID options are severely limited. In the case of OpenMediaVault, for example, it even tells you in the interface that RAID over USB is unreliable, and it won't even give you the option to set that up. Considering how important RAID is to NAS solutions, I think that's a big problem. However, it is possible to architect your own solution, but you'll have to put a little bit more work into it. So no matter what, I think the biggest consideration here is whether or not the USB bus for hard drives is going to be a problem for your use case. Now, with all of that in mind, I do feel that the Argon EON case is fantastic. If you are looking to build a Raspberry Pi powered NAS, then I think it's going to be a very worthy contender for that project. If any of the limitations via USB aren't something that's going to impact you, then especially check out this case. Anyway, let me know what you thought of this review or anything else for that matter in the comments down below this video. What I'm going to do is get back to editing the next video for you guys right now. I'm working on a bunch of things for you. And if you want to see what I'm working on, then be sure to subscribe to Learn Linux TV for the latest in Linux, and I'll see you in the next video.